Hi, everyone. I am Leslie McShane. You may have seen me earlier in the week, but we are turning the tables a little bit today. Welcome to the last day of the Relationship Rescue Summit. I have the pure honor of being able to sit down with our host today. Kathleen McDermott is a stress and lifestyle management coach, Restorative-Yin yoga, and adaptive yoga teacher for stress relief. She is the host of the Your Life Your Way podcast, and of course, our host here at the Relationship Rescue Summit. Her favorite roles are mom to her twin sons and grandma to her grandson. Hey, Kathleen, how are you?
Hello, Leslie. Thank you so much for being here with me today. I appreciate you taking the role and switching places today.
Well, I am very excited to be able to get to sit down with you because you are the mind behind the summit. You are the one that has the whys of why we are all here. And so I'm excited to talk to you today. So first thing, obviously, I want to talk about your journey of becoming a yoga teacher and an SLM coach. Tell us why you decided to go down this path.
Ultimately, it chose me, but it began with me choosing to teach differently. I just believe that every body has the opportunity to practice yoga, and that's really where it started. So I learned to teach adaptively, which is helping people find their pose, their way that allows them to be safe and enjoy the practice. And whatever is meant to come up through that practice, it gives the freedom to do so. So it started there, and it really was just wonderful. And I was very happy teaching. And even though I had men in the class, there was something, I was able to see something, intuitively catch something that was going on with the ladies in the class. And as that grew and we really began to play with creating their pose, helping them find theirs, which was really a good time, as well as an honor to help them do so, to hold space for them.
Right.
But it really began to blossom. And I decided to learn to teach restorative yoga because, stress is just rampant in the world. We just can't seem to get our minds away from it. And of course, then it affects us physically. So I learned to teach restorative, but it just began to roll. And then eventually I began to realize it was becoming something else. It was just rolling into guiding my students in a different way, in a deeper way. And I realized that it was more of a teaching. And in fact, I didn't even feel it right at the time, the right word. I felt so often the student myself working with them. But realized that ultimately it ended up feeling like that word coaching. And so I thought, well, I'm going to go do the certification. So I went and did the certification, and it really was choosing me, because ultimately, I think you probably can certainly support this yourself, that we have our greatest lessons sometimes in our hardest moments.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. And ultimately going through some trials and tribulations of life, and specifically happening more in my midlife, began to give me the opportunity to, and I could hear the universe saying, okay, well, if you can survive all of this, it will just empower you to, to serve others. And I expect you to serve and continue to help women. And so it grew on that path. It really grew into being able to hold space for women on a deeper and broader level, so that they can really, as I say, your life, your way, find your way, because we spend, Leslie, too much of our life being and doing how others think that we should. We're so conditioned. And that's really why I created this summit. I wanted to bring you all in and create this summit, because conditioning comes through generational, parents, grandparents, and so on. And then we have society also informing us how we're supposed to be, live, do, perceive, believe, everything. And it starts when we're born. And it becomes such a way of, actually more than a way of life, that we're not really living. We become so covered in these layers. And I was learning this myself. I had my own struggles in life, and at the time didn't realize my role. So ultimately, in going through my own challenges, it gave me an opportunity to see the conditioning and to really step back and look at what was my role in my life. And that was the first huge question. Well, I should say one of two, because the other one really came before this, but there were two huge questions. And this was one, is to what role am I playing in my life? So all of these challenges, for example, my relationships all through, whether it be school, whether it be friendships, whether it be work, coworkers, whether it was partners, and then of course, marriage. And when my marriage fell apart, that was when that question became something I needed to ask, is what was my role in this relationship? And that opened the door to what was my role in all of my relationships throughout my life.
Mm.
That's why I created this summit, because I've been there and I know the difficulties and the influences.
Yeah. There's nothing more powerful than going through it yourself, working to the other side, or continuing to work to the other side, because I think it's an ongoing process.
Yes.
But then wanting to reach back and bring other people with you because you see them struggling as well. So I want to get back to the summit a little bit and kind of get into your brain and ask you what you would hope the benefits that the women that have been in the summit are achieving.
It probably may have seemed a bit odd, the topics that I wanted to pull together and how they affected relationships. And the reason I chose each is because, number one, they're ones that we don't really, I know I didn't, look at as affecting all my relationships. How does me, whether I exercise or not, how does me, whether I have, questions about handling money, how does that affect my relationships? How does my closet affect my relationships?
Right.
And each one of these has a unique perspective and a unique influence on our life. And I'm hoping that it opens up the possibility, creates a paradigm shift, if you may. It opens up the possibility of thinking more deeply, to not cause people to say, oh God, I've done this, but to say, what is my role? And what roles have these segments played in my life that in turn has influenced my role? So for example, and this really comes back to, I know, first of all, when people think relationship summit, they were thinking probably partnership, spouse, partner. But there's so many different relationships that we have throughout our life. And if we're having, let's say even finances, that was a bit of probably a unique thing. We know that that affects our relationship with a partner, whether it be a relationship, a marriage. We know that that is a huge factor in a one-on-one relationship. But if we have that discomfort and the anxiety of feeling whether we're less than, or we're, whatever words you want to attach to it, unworthy, those feelings, those emotions, those thoughts aren't just related to that partnership, but it's how we interact with where we work.
Right.
Our friends that we associate with, how we feel about ourselves in those relationships, that all of that inside feeling does come out in all of our relationships. And we say, our closet. Well, how we feel about ourselves, it's not just feeling good in what we wear, but it's feeling great about ourselves. And all of these segments that you all are so wonderful, and why I brought you all together is because I knew you each had a unique perspective on, number one, living life your way. How each and every one of you have a unique point on how what you have gone through, because each and every one of you have dealt with the struggle yourself of what you teach. Is how that has affected your path and your journey and your relationships. And I know that each one of you can touch at least one other person, if not hopefully many, to have them think, okay, this is more than just me choosing to move my body or not.
Yeah.
It's just so much deeper than that.
I want to go back because you were talking about generational conditioning as well as societal. How how can this working on this relationship with ourself help our future generations, our
Beautiful
children,
question.
our
Beautiful
children's
question.
children?
That is so important to me. And if I had to pick one spot and say one thing as to why it's so important to me, I mean, I absolutely want every woman to feel safe being herself, guilt-free. But ultimately, whether you have children or not, you are a mother of this earth.
Mm.
And at some point, it is our, pick a word, obligation, it is our opportunity, it is our blessing, it is our honor to break these cycles. And I guess the best way for me to share is my personal experience and why it became so important to me. And I think sharing my own touches others to say, okay, I see what she's saying. My boys saw me spiraling. You know, a marriage doesn't break up overnight.
Right.
And my challenges going through, which was a huge physical midlife change, which was horrible. Empty nest, I have twins, they left at the same time. So it was
Oh,
kind of unraveling of a lot of things,
right.
but it was what I brought into, is what we both brought into our marriage. And I'll put it this way. You know that saying, we've all heard it. When you get married, somebody's bound to say to you, when you get married, you marry the whole family. Well, that's not just that immediate family. That's everybody that came before.
Uh-huh.
So
Uh-huh.
we bring all of that into the relationship, and we're actually bringing that into all of our relationships. But right now we're talking about specific a relationship and having children.
Mhm.
So my boys watched me at my best. They watched me at my worst, and they saw me through everything. And as they were growing and we went through the divorce, I reached my point of saying, okay, you can either, you know, continue to feel miserable, or you can bring yourself out of it and do and be better, grow. That was the choice I made, because I have my voice.
Mhm.
And ultimately, whatever I choose affects them. And I realized this, my role, but I realized the cycles that I was living through, that I watched my mother and father live through. I knew from their parents. I could see it. I could
Mhm.
see this stuff and realize that I'm going to see it in my boys if I don't change. And if I don't change, I can't teach them. I can't set the example, and I can't change. I can't help them. So it's a case where, okay, I need to end this because of my boys. And then now, because I have a grandson, I don't want these cycles that are hurtful to personally yourself to continue through them and just continue on through generations. So it became so important to me to create a different legacy. You know, legacy to me
Mhm.
is about leaving them stuff. It's about how I live my life. And we talk openly. My boys are great. We have great conversations about things that I can see that I've passed off, little behavior things, and from their dad, and they
Sure.
recognize, and it's not a negative to their father or I, it's what, you know, it's forgiveness for what we didn't know.
Sure. We all do
Now
the best we can.
exactly. So when
Right.
I knew I wanted to do better, and am currently doing better for them and still guiding them and listening and offering, and they're very good about, they're aware, and it's their choice right now to continue to work on, which you've said, it's a practice, it's a lifetime practice
Mhm.
of being and doing better, of living
Mhm.
better. And that's why, because just, it's our job. I firmly believe we're passed the torch, and you're handed the torch, and you're offered that opportunity to break the cycles or not.
Yeah. I think there are a lot of women out there who don't feel that they are worthy enough to do the work on themselves. And so if you can put it in the place of, well, you're doing this for your children, then you will also be benefiting from it. But if you have to look at it through the eyes of doing it for your child, just do that.
Just do that at the most. Yes, do that. And it's
Yeah.
funny that you're saying that, because I did I was a mess this morning. I said, I've got to do this video because I can't type it out. So I recorded a video and I put it in my private group because I have this wonderful woman who is just such a beautiful soul. And I'll make this short, but because of certain conditioning that she's gone through in her life, she is hiding and she is fearful and she's worrying what other people think and she's people pleasing and it's hurting her. And we talk and I know it's hurting her. And yet we think, and this is what we hear, and I bet you've heard this. Well, this is just the way I am. This is the way I've always been. And I sometimes just want to shake women and say, no, this is not who you are. This is so not who you are. This is such an opportunity for you to, to not blame, to not be ashamed, but to open up and grasp, do the discovery, do the dig. Where did it all come from? Where did it all start? And then grasp that understanding. Okay, accept it and know that you can make the changes. And then the next thing I know you'll agree with is, well, it's not that easy. No, it's not, but it's hard to stay where you are and it's hard to change. So choose your heart. And in doing so, if we change the relationship with ourselves, and that's really what it's about, in recognizing that the conditioning was not your fault. It's not about fault. It's just something that rolls with every birth. And recognizing that and just saying, you know, who am I? Who am I really underneath? Do I, you know, did I believe everything my father believed? Did I believe everything my mother believed? No, it came to the point where I said, no, I don't. That's not me. And that's okay. It's not an insult to them, but finding out who you are and changing that relationship with yourself and really loving you for you. And that means all the stuff that is going to remain, because let's face it, there's still stuff there, but being able to be a kinder, gentler, compassionate person with myself allows me to be more compassionate and gentle and kind to others, which in turn is going to enhance those relationships.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So obviously everybody needs to know what their first step. I would assume that being here at this summit is a great first step, but what are some other ways? What would you suggest other people do to begin this journey?
The first does come back to the word of recognizing awareness, because we not only need to be aware of the fact how you're reacting to things, what are the most common triggers, you know, what is that continuous roller coaster ride that happens over and over and over again that you just think you can't get off.
Right.
Just recognizing that and noticing how your body feels when you're going through that. Because remember, our relationships aren't in here. Or if it's a one-on-one relationship, it's not just from our heart, we love that person. It's the whole body, mind, body, spirit connection. It's all of us that are in every relationship, whether it be going to work with coworkers, whether it be a stranger in the grocery line at the store. It's the whole body and being is there. So recognizing how we feel and just recognizing what are some patterns. And also recognizing that fear is a big part of the ego. You know, fear used to be to protect us from the lions and bears and things like that. But fear has become a real controller of life, keeps us in a box. And
it thinks it's trying to keep us safe.
It does. You know, that old comfort zone. It's so not comfortable.
No.
It's so not comfortable. But that fear is there for a reason. So in recognizing and kind of studying that a little bit, okay, what am I afraid of? Why am I afraid of maybe changing this job? I really want to do this, but I can't leave here. And then all the things that the ego is saying as to why you can't do that. You know, you're too, fill in the blank.
Right.
Who do you think you are? All of that. So recognizing that fear and realizing that it isn't going to go away, but you can at least develop a different relationship with it. So if you take that fear and you understand, okay, I learned this from my mother, or I learned this from this experience, then that is something that, okay, maybe that needs therapy. Maybe that needs a professional therapist. Beautiful, do that. But recognizing the first thing is to what are the things stopping you? And it's basically fear and why. So that's important. And then the fear that is just under there, that's kind of a, ooh, then you can learn to work with that. So just that awareness, first of all, of how you are in situations, what are the most common triggers? And you gotta wanna, Leslie, you gotta wanna.
Yeah.
You've got to be able to recognize these things and ask yourself honestly, do I really want to continue feeling this uncomfortable? And it boils down to, do I want to continue not feeling safe being me? I really want everybody to be able to feel safe being themselves, guilt-free.
Yeah.
And recognizing the patterns and then asking myself, okay, or asking yourself, okay, how can I get through this? What are my steps? Can I do this on my own? Can I read books? Can I, whatever, can I find a source that works for me? Therapy, do I want professional therapy? Do I think that's my best place? Do I want to work with a coach? And it doesn't have to be an all or nothing. It can be simply as starting out with moving your body. Maybe just starting out with simple videos on Facebook with you.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's just starting in that small place and finding out, because you and everyone who's in this, which is another reason why I love everyone that has presented here, all of the speakers, because you each know that every person is unique and you don't do a across the board, one size fits all.
Right.
Because that's not life.
No.
And finding the one person to start with in a small place and just get a taste so that you can begin to quiet that voice a little bit that's telling you, no, 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 don't do that. And you can feel safe just testing. Then once you get your foot in the water, I always said, once I tried something new that I thought I couldn't do and I did it, then it was like, okay, what's next?
Mm-hmm. First time's always the hardest.
Yes, yes. But boy, is it, I use the word jazz. It just always jazzed me. It still does when I do something that is new.
Yeah.
So it's really having that, people will say confidence. It's having the clarity first, which you get by awareness, just looking, examining, get a little clarity that, yes, I'd like to do something. I want to change. I want to create a new legacy. I don't want to feel this discomfort, this pain, this dis-ease, which leads to disease.
Mm-hmm.
And then having courage just to dip your toe in, if that's all you need to do is just a toe, or you can jump in full-fledged. It's whatever's right for you.
Right.
And then once you've had that courage and you take a step to get support, then the confidence comes.
Yeah.
And then you just get more awareness and you get more clarity and you get more courage and you get more confidence. And even though it is a lifetime practice, that's a beautiful thing. It doesn't mean that we keep falling back into bad habits. It's that we begin to recognize when some of those bad habits come up and we can stop them and say, not today, or just breathe through it, honor it, sit with it, whatever's best for you in that moment. And finding out what's best for you is part of that practice. It's part of that work, because what works for you may not work for me,
Right.
and vice versa.
I love the thought of putting yourself 10 years from now
Mm,
and being in the same exact position that you're in.
scary.
Yeah. And ask yourself if you're okay with that. And
Mhm.
if you're not, then, you've got time. It's 10 years earlier. You've got time to change that picture of what's
And
going to be.
avoidance sits in. It continues, I should say. Avoidance discontinues.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Or it's not going to happen to me, or just ignoring it. It'll go away. No.
Yeah. And I love your just stick a toe in and try things, because, it's just like in money. Every time you do a little thing for yourself, it's an investment. And even though the investments are small, just like we know in money, you may be putting away money a little bit at a time, but over time, it grows so big. And the same is true with doing things for yourself.
It does. And some of the toughest parts when you're examining your relationships, you are examining yourself and you're examining your role. But as you're going through this process, what really comes to the forefront is, are these relationships healthy for me?
Mm,
And one thing that I learned is I learned to be choosy who I surround myself with. for a variety of reasons. As you're doing the work, it almost can feel as if you're outgrowing some folks.
Yeah.
So if you're trying to get off that roller coaster ride, but others want to stay on it, you have to honor that because that's their journey.
Yeah. And you have to be okay with that and know that that's
Absolutely.
okay. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And wish them well as you wish yourself well on your journey.
Mhm.
But it's that old water cooler picture, people around the water cooler Monday morning who had the worst weekend or who's the most tired or who's the busiest and all of that stuff. And sometimes part of that work is beautiful because you really can clear out things that send them off with love, wish them all the best, but you have to do what's right for you.
Mhm.
And that's the same with people pleasing and worrying what other people think and taking things personally and chasing perfection. All of that is part of the conditioning and it's causing a lot of stress and it's affecting every relationship you have, especially the one with yourself.
Yeah. Wow. Do you have any kind of closing remarks that you want to give to
Yes.
all of us?
Yes. Working with a coach, working with a therapist, they're hugely beneficial. It's important to find the right one for you. Not everyone is the right one for everyone. Not one can
Right.
serve everyone. And what do I mean by right for you is someone that knows and understands, probably has been where you are. They've walked through that fire. They've had the hard lessons. They've come through the other side and they have techniques and abilities and solutions and tools and methods that gives you a menu to try and see. And if those things those things that are offered, tongue-tied, aren't exactly for you, they allow them to spark your own creativity, because that's also one thing that we do lose through our life of just busy and obligations and everything that's going on, is we lose our creativity.
Mhm.
Allowing your mind to open up to ideas. And that's one thing I hope that comes out of this summit, is let all of these beautiful speakers and what they've given you speak to you and allow you to open up your creativity and think, okay, well, the way she did it doesn't feel exactly right for me, but that makes me think about this, which is similar, or just to spark that idea that, hey, I'm going to give that a try, because at least it gets you going.
Mhm.
It gets you going. So let your creativity come forth. Don't be afraid to embrace possibilities. And when people try to tell you, no, 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 what are you doing? Don't do that. That's scary. That's their fear talking. That's their fear, their insecurity talking. Bless them, hug them, love them, but let them that's their journey to solve theirs. Don't take it on as yours. Keep on your path. And when you fall back, 2 steps forward, 3 steps back sometimes, call it a review process. It's just a review. Just pick yourself up and keep moving forward. It's worth it. All of the work, the struggle, the fire that you feel you're in, it's all worth it, because there's just so much freedom when you uncover and shed all those layers and become who you truly are meant to be.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Well, I thank you again for allowing me to be part of this summit. And I have enjoyed sitting with you today and hearing from the host what you want and want from all of us to come from this summit. So I think
And the
it's
reason
wonderful.
I asked you to interview me is because you are a fabulous interviewer, because you have your own podcast. Go ahead,
thank
throw
you.
out the title of that podcast again.
The title of my podcast is Redesigning Midlife, and I am encouraging all midlife women to prioritize their health and wellness now, because like I said, you look forward in 10 years, what kind of life you want to be living. If you start working on your health and wellness now, you're going to be happier now and you're going to live longer.
You know
You
what?
just will.
And one thing that we find, and especially in midlife, because things all start to volcano in midlife, everyone in this summit, including Leslie, everyone listens. They don't just listen, but they hear what you're saying. And we as women, how many times do we say nobody's listening, or we feel like nobody's listening? We can't get anyone to listen to us.
Right.
So please understand that everybody here is a fabulous listener. So with that, I thank you so much for taking on the role today. And I thank everyone for being a part of the Relationship Rescue Summit. There will be one more video dropping, well, actually, I'm going to be interviewing myself, but there'll be one more dropping today. And I cannot say how honored I have been to have all of you here with me through this whole amazing process. And so I'm so honored to have all of the attendees. And I hope that they will reach out to everyone who, at least just do a chat with all of these wonderful, fabulous presenters. Thank you so much. I appreciate it very much.